Hi there, Christian Henson here, and welcome back to our Make Music Day series of experiments, making noise, making samples, making music. Now, if you missed yesterday's episode, it's well worth catching, and it's linked above and below. If you recall, we decided to make an instrument from something we found in our house. For me, I love the kitchen because it's got lots of resonaty stuff. We tried this, but felt it was a little bit too complex sounding. So we moved to this and learnt how pinching wine glasses is a way of making a nice sound, but eventually settled on this round bowl, or a number of them. I smashed a few with my carrot beater, which my wife said looks like a vegan firework. What's amazing about making your own samples is no matter how unoriginal your composition, you can play chopstick with these things. But if it's something from your kitchen that you have made, no one else on the planet is making that sound. So that sound at least is yours. And the more adventurous you get, the more unique your compositions will be. So what I'm going to do is just going to use AirDrop to dump that in. There we go. Downloads. It's the earlier one. This is the one with all the bits and bobs. Okay, I'm going to take this nice and slow. I've moved the file out of my downloads folder, which is where my iPhone drops it to, and into the audio files folder of my project. Now what I'm going to do is just drag it onto this track that I've called original iPhone file. Now obviously I've been nancing around and there's a lot of stuff going on there, so I just need to find that original file. Okay, I like that one. So what I'm going to do is simply chop that. You can do that with your scissors or with the backward slash button. Just get the marker like that. And then what I'm going to do, just for convenience, is put that onto bar 1. And then basically what we need to do is just find the very beginning. So if you put your marker close, you'll see it'll come out and go all wiry. Now with percussion instruments, really easy to see where that starts. Nicely there, and there you go. That's your sample. That's all you need to make the instrument. Now there's two ways of exporting this as its own sample. You can either go convert to audio file, or indeed you can bounce it. So let's say I'm going to bounce it as, don't want all of this business. I'm going to bounce it as, just like you would a track, bounce my bowl. There we go. Now I'm going to load what I call Dave, which is actually called the sampler, multi-sample there. And there's loads of auto sampling options with the Logic sampler, but I think it's better to build it yourself so you really know how this is working. Now what we need to do is click on mapping there, and then let's find that little bad boy. It bounces my bowl, and we're just going to pull it on here. There we go. And the minute it's pulled on, it'll play in this register of the keyboard. So what I'm going to do is just going to drag it all the way down and all the way up to the right. And it'll basically speed it up and slow it down. There you go. So now next thing to do is to tune it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another, I don't want to duplicate that. I'm just going to grab something that I know is at the right pitch and is in tune, which for me is the vintage electric piano. And I'm just going to tune up, just put them both into record and then tune this up. And I'm going to do it by moving where the root key is. That's pretty good. That's actually in tune. Now, if you want to fine tune it, you can go to the top of your instrument here, and there's a fine tune thing here. That sounds pretty good. Now you'll notice, let's take the electric piano off, that it's a bit kind of snappy. I'm playing it on the keyboard. It really kind of lets go very quickly. It's not like the bowl. We've got this thing called envelope. You just need to drag this bit to the right as much as you want. If you want it to play the whole sample, that's great. Or you might want to just control it a bit more. And finally, next to this is velocity. And if I play quietly, it's not a huge amount of difference between the top and the bottom, so I'm just going to turn this up a bit to make that more musical. Then all you need to do is save it wherever you like, my bowl, and you're ready to make music with it. What I love about making instruments out of household objects is there isn't the association. It could be a Celeste, but it's not taking us to Hogwarts. It could be some form of xylophone, but it doesn't sound childish. It's just very enigmatic, I think is the word. Now you may notice, if you go back to the original sample, there's just a hint of noise there, but the minute you start playing more notes, you get a bit of a build-up there. Now that may require some noise reduction. So to take us through that process and also how to build a simple instrument in Kontakt is the king of Kontakt tutorials, a fantastic YouTuber, friend and collaborator, Mr. Dave Hilowitz.
Hi, I'm Dave Hilowitz. Let's make a Kontakt instrument. So I haven't looked at this sample at all. I'm just about to download it right now. So we're going to be doing this together. I'm going to drag it onto my desktop. And the first thing I do when I've got a new sample like this, especially if it's something someone sent to me, is I bring it into an audio editor like iZotope and just listen to see if it needs any noise reduction. As you can see, I've got it set to spectrogram mode. If you're used to audio editors, but you're not used to iZotope, you've probably seen audio represented like this. That's a graph of the amplitude or the loudness of the signal. I want a graph of the frequencies because they show me a little bit more about the noise content of the sample. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is I'm going to play the sample and just have a listen and decide whether or not I think it needs any noise reduction. There is some noise, and we can actually see it in the frequency content. It's basically all of this fuzzy stuff kind of on the right-hand side of the signal. And as you can see, that fuzzy stuff is present throughout the signal. It's present at the beginning, which is obviously the most important thing when you have a percussive sound like this, and it's present as the sound kind of like gets quieter and quieter as it tails out. So I'm going to actually select this, and I'm going to open up voice denoise. On this Mac, I have Elements installed, which is kind of like the budget version of RX, which means a bunch of things in terms of the feature set, but it also means that the denoise tool is called voice denoise. Doesn't mean you can't use it on samples, though. It actually works really well. So I've selected my noise fingerprint, which is this chunk over here, and it's important to select a chunk of the sound that doesn't actually contain any melodic content. You can see here these long, bright bands. Those are the actual notes. Those are the actual frequencies that make up the timbre of the instrument. But by this point, by the point I'm selecting, there's actually a good bit of silence, and it's not real silence, it's room silence, which means that it's actually noise. So we're going to click Learn. And what's happening right now is RX has figured out the frequency profile of this chunk of audio on the right, and it's now going to use that signature that it's now learned to remove that from the entire length of the waves. So now I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to turn reduction all the way up to 20 and hit render. And as you can see down here, that made a drastic difference in terms of the frequency content of our sound. Here's what it sounds like now. So yeah, much, much better. Okay, now that we've got the RX done, I'm going to hit save. And now I'm going to close out of iZotope, and we're going to open up Live. Could be any DAW, I just happen to use Live. I think it's easy to work with. I'm going to pull up Kontakt, and since we have only one sample, I can do this really neat thing. I can just drag the wave file right onto this window, and it will make a new instrument automatically. And if I try to play the instrument, already sounds like an instrument. Not much needs to be done at this point. All I really need to do is I need to set this root note. Every pitched sample has a root pitch. That is the actual pitch of the note that was recorded. When I play a note, let's say D4 or C3 or something like that, the sampling engine needs to figure out how much this sample needs to be pitch bent in either direction. And the way that it figures that out is by looking at this root note. So in a sense, the root note is the single most important piece of information about any sample. To figure out the root note for this piece of audio, I'm going to drag it over to the timeline, and I'm going to load up a tuner plugin. You can use pretty much any tuner plugin, and we're going to listen back. Okay, it's F#4. So now we can go back into Kontakt, and I can just do F#4. Another nice thing I can do down here is I can lengthen the release a little bit. And that's it. That's how you make a Kontakt instrument. It's really that simple. Obviously, you can get really, really complicated. You can do scripting. You can make a nice UI. But for the purposes of putting a sample together so you can do some composing, it takes like 5 minutes, tops. Okay, see you next time.
Thank you so much, Dave. Do check out his YouTube channel down below and subscribe. It is a wealth of amazing knowledge, tutorials, but also killer free samples too. All of these instruments are available to download down below alongside what I'm just about to move on to, the slightly more complicated is not the word, but more complex, more detailed instruments that we've been working on. If you recall, I suggested that if you wanted to be more adventurous, or indeed if you're a sampling veteran, that we could go in and make something that had what's called velocity layers. So basically taking your vegan rocket and just slowly starting quiet and then slowly building up to the top layer. We agreed that we'd do that in 10 velocity layers, and I really kind of insisted that we stick to 10, no more, no less. All will become apparent, particularly for you sample ninjas. So let's see how my bowl turned out. Absolutely beautiful. You'll feel that it's more musical. But if we look at the Kontakt sampler, what you'll see is instead of it accessing 10 different samples, different clips of sound, it's 10 different zones accessing the same piece of audio. So if I go through, you'll see it's going, as I get louder, it's going up the recording. The same thing goes for the Kontakt version. And again, I'm going to show you how to build these momentarily, believe it or not. You'll see again, this is all accessing the same sample. You don't need to use Logic to do this system. This is the beauty of it. Whether it's Cubase or Pro Tools, the principle is going to be the same on how you're going to be able to build this in EXS or Kontakt and possibly SFZ in less than 4 clicks. There's going to be a little bit of post-production to do, but the building will take literally seconds. I also took the liberty of taking the old firework and, as you can see with all of the carrot that's all over it, sampling this wine glass, quite a beautiful sound. So I'm going to build one of those instruments and show you how to go about doing it. For those of you who are using Logic, download the MMD 2020 template and you'll see that we basically have a whole bunch of empty stuff, the zones and your iPhone file. So let's just dig that one out. So I'm going to dig out the second of the two, big old thing. And this is the post-production part. Basically what we need to do is just cut to the beginning of each of these notes, create a slice. Now the way that I'm going to do it in Logic, I'm sure there'll be equivalents in Cubase and Pro Tools and whatever DAW you're in, is a cheeky little trick called remove silence from audio regions. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's great. And then what we need to do is just go in and get all accurate. So you can really see it's great with these percussion instruments where the sample starts. Now these quieter ones, it won't be so clear. So I'm just going to go in there. Let's just check that that's not kind of clipping. That sounds fine to me. A lot of people find the sampling process incredibly tedious. I've created so many, literally thousands of sample instruments that I just know the euphoric kick you get the first time you play a new instrument. So for me, it's a great motivator. And if you've gone to the trouble to record these 10 samples, I do hope that the reward is going to be a just dessert. So we're not hard editing, we're just doing it within the range of Logic. Okay. So there we have all of our slices. Now what we need to do is put them on their markers. Very easy way to do that. And again, same principles will apply in Cubase and Logic. The principle is very simple. Make your sequence 120 BPM, place your first slice at bar 1, and then each slice thereafter needs to be a whole 5 bars after. So it needs to go bar 1, 6, 11, 16, 21, 26, 31, 36, 41, 46. And finally, just going to make sure there's enough of the note intact, as it dies away as possible. So I'm just going to go and butt it up against the next notes like this. Because we didn't record it to a click, these will be uneven, but that's not a problem. You'll see why in a minute. So we're not hard editing, and we won't indeed be exporting these as separate slices. What we're going to do is create a single piece of audio. We've got the quiet one, slowly getting louder. Awesome. And I'm just going to, as one final measure, put some fades in. So let's go fade outs, 3500. Just going to use this curve. So all we're doing is just slowly reducing whatever noise there is at the very end of the sample. It's good. Let's just try a louder one. Pretty much out by then anyway. Okay, there's a little bit of noise at the end there. Great. Right. Now, the first one I'm going to build is going to be the Logic sampler, formerly known as the EXS, and I'll show you how to do it in Kontakt. So, down below is something for you to download. It's a couple of templates, and you can put them wherever you like. What's great about the new Logic sampler is you can simply point it to wherever you like. Now, I've stuck them here, and we've got template, 3 formats. We've got the EXS. You'll see there's a missing file in sample instrument, a WAV called this sample doesn't exist. So what we're going to do is we're going to bounce this down as this underscore sample underscore doesn't underscore exist. There it goes. So there's our single piece of audio. Now, when we load our software instrument, something amazing is going to happen. And this is the first time I'm ever going to hear this. So let's count the clicks. Load, 2, 3, 4. So it's accessing all of those different velocity layers automatically. And as you can probably tell, I'm feeling a little bit pleased with myself. So basically what's happened is I've built this sample instrument in EXS, and then I've got rid of the piece of audio. We've basically fooled it into thinking this audio is in fact this audio. It's a little bit easier in Kontakt, and if you recall, there was the rather awkward bowl. Well, I did that in a few velocity layers as well. So let's open that up and build that in Kontakt. So here's one I prepared earlier. We've got all the different velocity layers. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do this time, if you're making it in Kontakt, is bounce, and I'm going to call this awkward plate. You can call it whatever you've sampled, whatever you've made a noise with. Bounce. There we go. And finally, let's go native instruments. Let's find, we've got our 3 formats. We've got our template here. So let's load that, and then it'll instantly give you an alert saying this sample doesn't exist. It can't find the WAV. So we could point it to the wine glass, but why don't we point it to the awkward plate? Awesome. So that again is accessing all of the different velocity layers there from this single piece of audio, and you can hear how awkward it is. Those 2 notes, those 2 fundamentals, if you will. Okay, the only thing I need to do on this is just quickly tune it. Slightly more atmospheric sound. I'm just going to very mysterious. So I've also done the building blocks of the SFZ instrument. So we've created the glass bowl in that for you to try out, but also as a boilerplate template, just like I've done here, so you can build your own. I have no experience of the Sforzando platform, so it would be remiss of me to try and give you a tutorial on that. If any of you know your way around it, then do share your findings and what you've done down below. But do also share the noise that you've been making and the samples you've been creating and the music, hopefully, you'll be making. If you upload any films or demos to any platform, just simply use the handle #SpitfireMMD2020. Now, I'm going to be back tomorrow to really dive into this process, because for you sample ninjas, I think there's some really interesting stuff to discuss here. It's going to be part of the Piano Book series on my own channel, which is linked down below. Piano Book is a community of people who create sounds and share them with each other for free. No membership required, just kind of sign up and off you go. And if you feel you've created something that's absolutely awesome and should be shared with the community, go to pianobook.co.uk to find out how you can go about doing that. If this has been your first time sampling, I hope it's been a revelation. If you've been more adventurous with the velocity layers, I hope you agree that it's definitely more musical. Thanks as ever for watching, and do subscribe if you haven't done already. Ding that bell to be notified the next time we put a film up. See you next time.